Uh, and there's the nice lady telling us that the recording is in progress. I'm really happy to be hearing this presentation, although I have to express some disappointment because I wanted it to be called Squidgy Oranges and the Point of Anguish, which I hope Pat will explain later on. But this is really an interesting issue that we don't talk about a whole lot in museums. Every once in a while, somebody says, oh my God, the artist wants to do this, or the visitors want to do this, or the caterer wants to do this. And, you know, what contemporary art museums do with these kinds of weird installations really is almost our laboratory for what we can do with other artists, with visitors, with, you know, catered events. So don't think of it as just, oh my God, this weird museum has all these strange things happening. But that, you know, what happens when somebody has a legitimate reason, or apparently legitimate reason, for bringing in material that you would never want to have in a museum. So I'm going to turn it over to Pat and Claire, and you should be able to screen share.
All right.
And we'll get going.
Let me find that. It's the big green button that says screen share. There we go. Thank you, all of you who came. It's including Kyle Dockery, my colleague in Wisconsin. Bonus points for you, Kyle. And is it, no, where is it? All right, Claire, introduce us while I figure this out.
Pat is a wonderful registrar that I had the pleasure of working with in the beginning of and the majority of my career as a curator. So I have learned an enormous amount from her over the years. And she likes to pretend that she is grumpy, but actually she is visionary. And one of the things that's rare about a visionary is that they are also an amazing team player, but maybe even more so are willing to let other people's ideas shine and just do the background grind. And I would never have been able to do this project without her just amazing coordination and the work that I signed her up for that I didn't realize and she had like an inkling about because we really underestimated it. Just the fact that she didn't throw up her hands and say no is a testament to her professionalism. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me go back and say, I'm Pat
curator.
Evans. This is Claire Carter. We both worked at the Scottsdale Museum of Contemporary Art. I was the registrar from 2005 to 2016. I'm now at Taliesin West, the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation. Claire was at SMOCA 2007 to 2018, so we overlapped for a good number of years. And we sometimes had some fun.
We had a lot of fun.
We had a lot of fun. Looking back, we had a lot of fun. I don't know at the time if we would have said that.
We did mostly because I thought everything was fun because I got to run the crazy ideas by everyone.
Well, and because you have a lot of enthusiasm, which is nice. Now, can people, if you cannot see the slideshow, could you turn your camera on and give me a thumbs down or tell me in the chat? I'm assuming that you can see the PowerPoint. So this is an exhibition that Claire curated at SMOCA called The Five Senses. Can you see the slideshow? Okay, good. Oh, that's right. You can just do the animated thumbs up. Sharon, you're so clever. This is an exhibition called The Five Senses, which coming up in February will be 9 years ago, which Claire and I both were a little horrified this morning and whenever we realized that. And we're going to talk a little bit, Claire's going to talk a little bit about the curatorial aspects. I'm going to talk a little bit about behind the scenes, registrar aspects. Julia Roberts, this is one of my favorite art memes. Her line from Notting Hill, just begging the curators to keep her informed. And in fact, in this show, it was very good. And this is an exhibition at SMOCA. Very often we had a very short lead time, not because of curators, but just because of general schedules. And we started planning and talking about this exhibition was it close to 2 years before it opened? I remember we had a huge amount of lead time because we
Was
could do
that
so much research. Like what Janice started to say is, contemporary artists ask you to do these wacky things. And so often your first response is, well, no, but we had enough time to reach out to other museums who had exhibited these works or similar works
Yeah.
and to try to think and plan and figure out ways that we could do it successfully and learning from others. So I spent a lot of the couple of years leading up to the show on the phone.
We had a full 3 years.
Did we have 3 years?
Yeah, because I saw
How did we do that?
I saw the Janet Cardiff piece that we'll show you in the MoMA PS1 show, which was on the 10-year anniversary of 9/11.
Oh, wow.
It was an exhibition honoring 9/11. So yeah, we sure did.
Yeah. A lot of times at Smoke, we were working with young artists or emerging artists, and we were borrowing things from the artists themselves, from their studio or from galleries. Every once in a while, we'd borrow things from museums, which, as everyone knows, just needs a lot more lead time. You need to get that loan letter out at least a year, if not 6 months before your show opens. And this exhibition, we borrowed things from MoMA, LA MoCA, the Perez Art Museum, Miami, a private collection, and a gallery. So that sort of forced us to have a lot of planning, but I didn't remember that we had 3 years. That was
Well, I
amazing.
probably thought about it a lot. I think about things. The thing that was really most important to me, and I think the reason that 3 years was the right amount of time, was that
Every show should have 3 years of planning.
everyone, yes,
Every show.
that's true.
Things go smoothly if you have 3 years of planning.
But I think maybe this is one of maybe 2 shows in my entire career where I got everything that I wanted. Not a second hand or not a second choice. I got the work that was right for the thing. And I literally had seen all of these 5 works around the world in the previous, 7 years of undergraduate, graduate school, working and traveling as a curator. And I didn't think to myself, oh, I want a Janet Cardiff. I knew that I wanted that Janet Cardiff. And that made it easy because there are only a few. So I started begging early. And it worked because when you're sincere and when people realize, because the people that work at art museums, as you guys know, they care.
They're not sincere.
No, they care. They care because they love that artwork too. And when they see that someone loves it and that they want to say something and allow that artwork to say something unique and special, they will move heaven and earth. And I think that that's what, when Pat said I was sincere, that's a great compliment, because I do think that that goes a long way.
So do you want to talk a little bit about the concept of the exhibition? It's called The 5 Senses. There were 5 artworks.
Well, the concept of the exhibition was not an exhibition concept until I saw that one piece and came back from New York. It's a piece that has sound, and all the people in the curatorial meeting were like, oh yeah, speakers, sound, blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't figure out why I couldn't explain it to them. And in like looking back and leaving that meeting and trying to articulate to myself what was so powerful, because I cried in that work. I actually went through and started thinking about other artworks that I had cried in front of. And that seems silly, but I brought all those artworks back in a group to the next curatorial meeting and said to everyone, well, these works there's something that's working between them. And these are such powerful pieces. And I said, I guess everything's really about the senses. And that is literally how the show got such a simple title, The 5 Senses, because it was both simple, but also meant to be a little bit to throw you off track, because they mean so much more than just the 5 senses.
So this is one of the pieces that we exhibited. We've already had a lively discussion this morning on how to pronounce this artist's name. I think it's Eliasson. You think it's Eliasson? Let's call the whole thing off, tomato, tomato. So we'll see. We borrowed this, and I'm doing air quotes because we borrowed it from the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles. But what we borrowed from them was like a 2-page sheet of instructions And we really needed to reach out to the artist studio to get a lot more information. He was very, very specific in the materials needed. And as you can see from this slide, this is a full room installation using water and a light, and it creates a rainbow. So you're walking into a light locked room, and before you, sort of hovering in front of you, is a rainbow created by these misters. So his studio is very specific on the type and brand of misters. The mats on the floor, do you remember the floor mat saga? They are mats, they were really sort of used in horse stables, like really high-end, nice horses, not like ponies at the fair. So they're a little squashy, and water, or in the case of horses, bodily fluids, urine goes through them, so they stay dry and non-slip on the top. They were from a German company, and the shipping was very expensive. And I don't think they were that expensive themselves. Maybe they were, but I just remember the shipping.
They
and
were so
needed to
heavy.
and they were heavy.
The museum, MoCA LA told us, well, you can do it, but you have to buy us horse mats. You can use them, but then you have to give us back the horse mats.
We gave them all the equipment.
Yeah, we did, but
The
they wouldn't
misters and
let me have,
everything.
they wouldn't loan it to us unless,
We gave them all the things.
yeah,
fully bought.
they treat, and rightfully so,
that's
they
fine.
treated us as a way to be able to get the materials to put the piece
Because
back
they had
on.
never exhibited it. They owned it, but they had never shown it. That's why they didn't have all the supplies.
Yeah, I think they were supposed to get it at the end of a large tour, and it was just beat up.
Oh,
And they
that's true.
couldn't, and they had it, but they didn't have the ability. They would have had to do the horse.
But yeah, I tried everything that I could think of to try to find another source for these horse mats. I once saw a woman in Target wearing riding clothes, and I chased after her with my business card, and she was surprisingly alarmed by that. I called Churchill Downs, and no, couldn't find them in the States, found similar things. The studio rejected them. They needed to be this particular brand of horse mats. So we went ahead and ordered them. Claire had mentioned a large tour that this piece had been in. It was at SF MoMA. If you've been there, that's a multi-story museum. It was installed on the floor above their conservation lab. So they brought in engineers to check out floor load and the possibility of leaks and all of that. So I talked to people at SF MoMA. Thankfully, SMOCA is slab on grade, so we didn't have to worry about that. Also, I spoke to people at the Dallas Museum of Art who had exhibited it. And there, you essentially need to build a room-sized shower pan with a drain in it, and the horse mats go on top of that, and it's raked ever so slightly so the water goes down the drain. Denver had problems where they didn't realize until they took it out that their shower pan had leaked and had ruined some of the hardwood floors in that gallery. And because the galleries all had fairly new flooring, they needed to redo huge sections of flooring at DMA. So they were not so fond of that. It did leak a little bit at SMOCA as well. I don't know if that stain is still there. They may have been able to buff it out.
It's
since
the
we left.
memory of the exhibition.
It is.
I saw that piece at the MCA in a mid-career survey that Pat is talking about that traveled an enormous number of places. And it was filled the entire museum, which MCA Chicago is pretty big. And oh yeah.
Kyle
you did
saw
too.
it. Yeah.
So I don't know how you felt about that show, Kyle, but this is one of his very early pieces. The show was so complicated, spinning artworks, walls, like 30-foot walls of moss. I mean, it was huge rooms of lights, and this piece was just this, on this black wall, there was this very simple door, and you went in, you couldn't barely see any light. And you walked up this very, you step onto this cushiony thing, and the temperature and the humidity start to change. And you turn this very blind corner, which is, was a little unnerving, and everything quiets. The whole exhibition was really busy and very loud. And you turn a corner again, and you're just standing in a rainbow. It was like transcendent. You just couldn't expect it. And it was so quiet and beautiful, and the like feeling on your face. And Kyle, do you remember that piece?
Kyle, there's only 6 of us. You can turn your mic off.
Well, anyway,
Anyway,
he might, but it was
He
also
might not
huge.
have his
You
right
do
to
remember
offense,
it. He says definitely.
Definitely.
Yeah, yeah, I remember. I remember it a lot. And I think my favorite one of that group was the ceiling fan, the fan that was like hanging from the ceiling on a rope.
Yeah, you're an adrenaline junkie.
I suppose so.
The rope is set up at like, I don't know, 7 feet. So it doesn't hit anyone's head, but it feels like it slides right by your face. This one is just very quiet.
all right.
Oh, do you
Four
want to
more
talk about
articles.
what? No, we'll do that when
Wait.
we talk about the.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about the Cardiff. So technically this piece came together. One of the things that we learned from in talking to the other venues who had it on this big tour is you can do this 2 ways. You can recirculate the water, in which case you really, health and safety comes into being because you've got water that's touching people, going through the mats, going through a system and back through. Knowing the hard water that Phoenix has and not wanting to deal with, I mean, some of the places brought in pool people and fountain people, and they were testing the water, and it was just a lot. We made the decision that the water would just go down the drain, which environmentally, but at the same time, it was such a fine mist. I don't think it wasn't gallons and
People
gallons
were
and
carrying
gallons
it
and
on their
gallons.
body. It's fine.
Yeah, no, it helped. They had bouncy hair. It was all good. Let me see. So is this going to let me, how do I, oh, I do this button now. Okay.
No, you skipped.
Did I skip one?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. So Spencer Finch, this is a piece. So this is really the touch piece. Eliason is sight.
Not really.
Not really, but in terms
was
of the
also-
exhibition.
Touch because you get wet and yeah.
Yeah, but primarily.
Yeah.
Each piece was primarily one sense. It was all of them.
I thought that it would be funny if people thought that, but I genuinely don't believe that.
Anyway, so this was a stack of box fans in these little frames, and they were hooked up to a bunch of power strips and kind of a sounder light board that would program them. So they would all come off or on at different speeds at different times, and it recreated the wind at Walden Pond on a particular time, March 12th, 2007. When did you first see this piece?
I saw this on the second floor of MoMA in it was actually, maybe it wasn't MoMA because it was in the collection. It was a collection installation. And it was just, I turned the corner into a room and I saw this so curious, half moon of fans. And this is in a lot of ways the least emotional piece in the show. Finch was recreating Thoreau's experience while he was trying to, and he was standing there sort of meditating on Walden Pond. And I have been to Walden Pond as a child, and I have also, very much read Thoreau's work. And I loved the combination of the bareness of the technology, the sort of honesty of the piece. It also is a pretty early piece for this artist. And there's something, I think I didn't, although I didn't plan it, I think there's something about the simplicity and the honesty of them that is sort of required of a young contemporary artist that doesn't have a lot of resources.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, they really are just box fans that are stacked one on top of the other in this wooden frame. I think they were shipped in their little towers, and the wooden feet were separate, just blanket wrapped in the crates. The instructions, I remember, weren't fabulous. I think we needed to reach out to the studio to get a little bit more information on how to install it, but it was basically just daisy chain, plug them together. The only real problem I had with this one on the back end was, since we're borrowing from an institution in Florida, the Cisneros Foundation, the shippers that I was primarily working with wanted to take it, pick it up in Florida, take it to either Boston or New York, cross-dock it, and then bring it to us. And I just didn't want all of that extra road time. So I ended up working with, I think it was Displays, to just bring it. I was like, there's got to be someone who just like ships across I-10. This is a major freeway. Can't we do that? And we ended up doing that, which is nice because the Ernesto Neto also came.
It didn't come
From
from
Florida.
Miami?
This one?
Yeah.
I don't remember where the Cisneros Foundation
it's
was. I think
Miami.
it was. Was it
Yeah.
in Miami?
Mhm.
So we had 2 pieces coming from Miami then. So we'll talk about the Janet Cardiff next, which is the sound piece that you said that you saw at MoMA. And in fact, well, let me see.
We
Can
have
I
a video of
escape?
it.
We
It's
have a
hard to
video. It'll
explain
take
if you
me a
don't.
while to get there, probably. But maybe not.
I don't know that they
The
can
last
see
part
that.
and the first part.
Can I
Oh
see?
yeah, no,
And
yeah,
then
it
that,
doesn't.
that first one.
All right, can you guys see the video? Can someone give me a thumbs up if you can see it? Maybe Sharon, thank you guys. All right.
Yeah, that's Paige. We always get that wrong.
So each of these speakers, it's a 40 channel installation, and each speaker is a singer mic'd, one person per speaker. So the mixing's happening after the cables come out of the speaker in a big computer system off. What you hear is not visitors. What you hear is the sound of
Of the choir sort of chatting before they start
amongst
singing.
themselves. Yeah. This is an ecclesiastical piece of music from medieval.
So this obviously is not, this artwork is installed at SMOCA. I don't know if this website says where this.
Oh, this is the
was.
this is in MoMA, or no, the Metropolitan's offsite space.
Oh, is it? Okay.
The what is hard to understand from that piece is, or from the video, is that it is like having a concert just for you, standing next to each speaker, which is purposely set at head height. You stand next to, in this very intimate way, to a singer that you would never experience. You can hear their breath, those like patterns, the little soprano boys, the vibrations of the sound are in your body. It is music experienced in a way you could never experience it in real life.
You'd never go up to a choir and start walking amongst the singers to hear each voice separately. And in this case, you could. So we knew on this piece that it would take a lot of our budget because it was an exclusive truck coming from MoMA. That was about $10,000 each way. We knew that MoMA would require, it was great. He was so helpful. They would bring out, or we needed to bring out, their conservator for time-based media. And he would do all the condition reports. And you might laugh, oh, they're just speakers, they're stands, condition reports. But if something happens to one of these speakers at this point, you couldn't buy new speakers exactly like this. You would have to buy all new 40 speakers, with the speakers fit. It would just be an incredible expense. And the artist is, very invested in this particular speaker, in the particular sound that it makes, and also the computer system that runs it.
I think this is an addition of 4.
Is it there only 4? It could
Oh,
be.
at maximum.
We also needed to bring out her sound engineer from Berlin, to oversee the installation. So that was an expensive flight. We were also, or I was warned by the registrar that I was working with at MoMA that we might need to have 1 or 2 new crates. And I did not tell Claire any of this at the time. I don't even know if you remember this. Like, this was
Oh, I
my
remember the
memory of
crates.
this show, was getting an email from that registrar about 8 weeks before the show opened. And it was one of those emails that you can start reading it. You can tell the lead is a little buried, and it was very carefully written and very precisely written. At first I sort of skimmed it and got to what she was saying and read it again. And basically it had been determined that the exhibition needed all new crates, not just 1 or 2. And it was going to be over $20,000 to have those crates made quickly enough to come to us. And
I
we'd
can't
already
believe it
spent
cost
so
that much money. I totally blocked that
It
out.
was so much money. And Claire was working on 2 other exhibitions at the same time. And I was just sort of flabbergasted and lost. So I talked to another curator on staff, Emily, and she helped me craft this very precise, careful, agonizing political email that basically said, WTF, all new crates, we can't do that. And whenever I sent that, Sydney called me, and I remember being in my office whispering. I don't know why I was whispering. I had my own office.
Because we were terrified.
Well, you didn't even know. I
Well,
didn't tell you
We as a
because,
team.
yeah.
No one.
And she and I were, she's like, I'm so sorry I had to send you that email. And I'm like, I'm so sorry I had to send you that one back, which mine was also not only like WTF, it was like, we had been talking about this exhibition for years. We are 8 weeks out. This is an exhibition with 5 artworks. We simply cannot replace this piece. If,
It was the only artwork in one gallery.
yes, it filled the entire, yes, it was the entire, I mean, the whole show took up all 3 galleries.
It took 3.
Yeah.
2 artworks, 1 artwork, and then 2
Yeah.
artworks in the last room.
So, I mean, whenever your exhibition's only 5 artworks and you're suddenly getting word that maybe you'll have to cut one because of crate issues, it was not so good. But I'm whispering to her and she's like, I'm like, we can't do that. She's like, I know, I'm so sorry. And I said, how low do you guys think you can go? And she's like, maybe about half that. And knowing that we had budgeted, I think we had budgeted about $5,000 for new crates. I told her, I think we can do 4,000.
Did you really?
I don't know what came over me.
It's a good thing they didn't call me, because I probably would have been like, we'll do it.
I know you would have, which is why I talked to Emily, and she came back and said, yeah, they'll make that work. They understood that this was a last minute request and blah, 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 blah. So it was fabulous. And I ended up going to one of the ARCS conferences, which is the registrar's conference. And I'm in the elevator, and you know, at conferences, you're looking at everyone's name tags. And in the elevator, I saw Sydney from MoMA. And we screamed and hugged each other, terrified the other people in the elevator. But she's since been a good friend. So sometimes you make good friends in foxholes or in crate debates, as it is.
I have also found that in large museums that have seemingly unlimited resources, people will have more mercy for museums that are smaller, that are scrapping together the best that they can,
Yeah.
and just like a respect for not, oh, we're the best and you're not good enough to
Yeah.
have these things, but rather a sense of generosity. That's really what we depended on a lot.
Yeah,
for
the
this
kindness
show.
of strangers. But no, I mean, they were great. And we'd borrowed from MoMA a couple times before that and a couple times after that. And Claire is absolutely right. Even though they're the big museum, I've always had great experiences in working with their staff. As Claire said, this piece, having these pieces in conjunction with others, Claire came a little bit early today and we started reminiscing about this exhibition, but I was in the Rainbow, the Eliason, and just as we had got that up and running and it was working, so this is during installation, at the same time the sound engineer from Berlin had finally, what you don't see in this exhibition is, or in this photo, each and every speaker has speaker wire that then goes back to really a tech closet, a tech room, where there are 2 or 3 big soundboard computer things with dials. I mean, it looks like you're launching the space shuttle. But he had just gotten everything set up and working, and that music started. So I'm looking at a rainbow in this room that we've built. It's come together. We've got the misters sorted out. It seems to be draining well. And this music starts, and I stood there and wept. It was absolutely beautiful. So many times with art museums or with any museum, exhibitions get so busy and you're so frazzled that you just, it's like, fine, that's up, that's done. I don't need to worry about that. And to have that moment where I really appreciated these artworks and appreciated being there and experiencing it was a gift. And looking back on my career, this is an exhibition that I will always remember.
We both had, it was unusually, it was not unusual to stand in beauty or to stand in amidst the 40-part motet and see visitors crying.
Yeah.
We had
people who would come every week.
We did. We had a man who used to be a former conductor come and conduct this piece in the middle of the room.
Thursdays were the free day, and we would see regulars. And there was one guy, remember, he started coming every Thursday, and then he would bring people.
Yeah.
Every single Thursday, he would bring people.
You would hear squeals and a little child's voice scream, "Rainbow!" And I don't know that I've ever felt so successful.
It was pretty great.
When you hear a child experience art and you know that you've solidified that, you've made it real for them. It's not something that's abstract. It's not something, oh, this person made it and I don't necessarily understand it. This is something that everybody comes to, and you might not feel it as strongly as someone else. What was also really telling about this piece is that we had to send it home at the end of the exhibition, but we had a permission to extend the run of the Eliason. And so we turned off the 40-part motet, and it went home, and the galleries went silent. And literally that day, people started talking about science in there, and no one talked about God anymore. I mean,
oh, they were talking about God before?
Oh yeah, I heard lots of people talk about it. Was just like an existential conversation people did. And it just flatlined. I mean, not that it was any less of a physical experience, but it was a lesson for me that the artworks can make something together in conversation that's bigger than them. And sadly, that probably will never happen again.
Well, that's also what curating is putting artworks next to each other. And by that proximity, have them create a new conversation. And that's definitely what happened with this show. I would say this is worth like occasionally Googling to see where it is or when it is. It was at the Nelson Atkins. I stole this photo from the web. When my friend April worked there and she spoke about it. It's worth tracking this down, finding it on view somewhere within a drive or a cheap flight and going to check it out, because it really is beautiful. It's about 9 minutes long. And
when I saw this in at PS1, which is an old, like feels like an abandoned elementary school in Queens, it's just a heartbreaking show of artists responding to the kind of horrors, and also artists that were just making work that weren't, it wasn't necessarily about 9/11. But this piece was in a side building on the second floor, and it resonated through the metal stairwells and all of the concrete. And so you just heard this haunting like sound, and you didn't know what it was. And you step up the staircase and you step into this space, and it was really powerful. But what's also so special about it is it was this tragic meditative moment in that exhibition, and in this exhibition it was just entirely different. And that is it was really the sign of a really good piece of art.
Oh, that's the link that I showed you. All right. Ernesto Neto, which is sort of smell.
Definitely
Smell.
This people wanted it to be touched, but obviously you weren't allowed to. But boy, did people really want to touch
they
this.
ever. small children would sort of run around underneath this.
It's nylon netting like you would see in a
It's kind of
pantyhose.
pantyhose. It's
Mhm.
pantyhose filled with spices.
And the registrar to tell them about how they got the spices in, because it's so funny.
I don't know if I remember.
Oh, she
I
used
remember
to-
she said she went to her in-laws' house afterwards and they were ready to call 911 because of the turmeric. She was so yellow, they thought she was jaundiced.
she had a special vacuum just for spice,
Oh,
one
that's
vacuum per
right.
spice. And she reversed the shot back to put the spice into the
In.
nylons, and you kind of rolled it up, like you would a nylon if you're putting it on your legs. And she did that. And then, she came back to take it home and they reversed it. It was very funny.
This was, I think, the last piece that we formally added because it's an early one of his work. He's now doing much larger, like it would have filled the entire museum. We wouldn't have been able to show the other pieces. And I think one of the reasons we were able to get this is we had worked with this museum on another exhibition and we knew some of the staff and their registrar was great. And I think she pushed through it wasn't a late loan request, but we were getting close to it being a late request.
We got lucky because the museum was being renamed and they had been moving into a new building. And I think
That's
there was a lot
right.
of chaos, and the staff maybe got away with a little bit of a looser rein than they would have.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff is luck.
Yeah.
This piece was in a gallery right next to the next piece we're going to talk about. And the conservation concerns about this piece, which is owned by a very serious museum, and it has food and also has pantyhose, and is suspended. You can't see it here, but it's suspended from the ceiling with like pantyhose with a cord in it as well. And you can easily, if you touched one of the legs,
That might show
There we
it a
go.
little bit
Yep.
better.
if you touched one of the legs, the whole piece would spin around.
Yeah.
Which was clearly not what we wanted, but definitely was a worry. We had to have someone stationed near this at all times.
We also had to very, very carefully, that some of those pieces almost touched the floor. They didn't quite touch the floor. And we had to very carefully sort of Swiffer and dust under it because there was just this fine, it was like dust, only it was spices that would accumulate under the floor under it. And every once in a while, when a little kid ran through, they'd walk through the spots that we couldn't quite reach. And then there'd be little
I think
footprints.
we had to
everywhere.
let it settle and then raise it up a couple of times.
I think we did because it did start to sag a little bit.
And it's so wide that it's not easy to get a lift over
Yeah.
the top.
That's
yeah,
right.
it
We
was-
needed to sort of like pull it back so the scissor lift. Some of these things I've blocked out. I don't remember.
And
this.
obviously those spice legs could easily bump into each other. And it was not an easy piece to install.
No.
I probably underestimated that one.
But the registrar came from Miami and she was incredibly helpful.
She
getting
had
that
done it
set up.
before.
She had done it before and that was really great. And she was also a lot of fun
She
to
was
work
really
with. So
funny.
it was good. But you're all here to hear about points of anguish in squidginess. That is something that the gallerist representing the artist that we're going to talk about next told me in a phone conversation. So I had called, again, doing research, and this piece had been shown in the big David Bowie show that was going around sort of at that time. How it got in the David Bowie show, I don't know.
So I was conceptual art at the same time, and he was
I
living
have
in
no
Covent.
idea.
Lowe was living in Covent Garden at the same time as Bowie.
So I was doing a lot of research and calling because how can we exhibit 6,000 oranges without inviting in pests
Have they
and
seen a
other
picture of
issues?
people?
They probably haven't seen it yet. This is a bad PowerPoint. I should have started with this one and then we'll go back to showing you the forklift of boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes. So that was a concern from a lot of the lenders with the Ernesto Nettos that it was going to be in the same gallery as this piece and would, some sort of insect get into the pantyhose and the spices. But I have to say, we did not have that problem.
No, we didn't.
I don't know how we didn't, but we really didn't. And it was the gallery who told me, we should go back. Visitors can take an orange.
Yes, there's no.
So the pyramid does not stay the whole time. So in fact, I can show you over here where it would get lower and lower and lower and lower. Sort of the idea is that visitors can participate in the making and unmaking of the sculpture, that as you take an orange, it changes the artwork.
Yeah, and then that it's kind of a hippie act of sharing and exchange with the artist and the viewer. It's an honest piece, but it's also it's also a reference to conceptualism and different modulations and formulations of geometry. And the sphere being this sort of perfect shape. But Lowe lived in Covent Garden, which has a very famous fruit market. And he was a poor grad student and always kind of coveted all the fresh produce and put all of his resources into this piece. And we have archival pictures of this piece, which is how most people know about it. Now, I saw it at the Tate Britain, probably in like 2003, and experienced it. It was about the size of the one on Pat's Instagram when I saw it. Do you want me to tell them about how I experienced it?
Well, let me
Yeah,
talk a
go
little
ahead.
bit more about the logistics. So again, we're concerned about insects, we're concerned about mold. And in speaking with the gallerist, that's when he said the immortal words, which if I ever write an autobiography, it's going to be titled this. At the point of about 2 weeks, the oranges would reach their point of anguish and become squidgy. And indeed they did. So whenever we first installed it, I let it go for 3 weeks to see what would happen if that 2 week was really accurate. And it was. Smoka was closed every Monday. So we would use Monday to essentially unbuild the pyramid, throw away all of the moldy and rotten oranges and rebuild it with whatever was left. Because visitors, while they took oranges, they didn't take enough to keep up with the squidginess. And that first time, 3 weeks was too long. The preparators and I working on it, I think all got a little bit overwhelmed with the mold on the oranges. We all went home and had showers and took Benadryl separately. And it was not so fun. Thereafter, every 2 weeks on the Monday that we were closed, we just had an orange crew of preparators who would unbuild it and rebuild it. And I think did we completely replenish the oranges 2 more times or 3 more times?
I blocked that out because we were so over budget that
Even with my key negotiating on MoMA crates.
yeah, it was, unfortunately, oranges change pricing as well, depending
Yeah.
on the time of year. And so we did do a kind of wholesale estimate of what they were going to cost, but we underestimated. I estimated adding oranges, not replacing everything and then rebuilding, basically, which is what Pat and her team ended up having to do.
I think we did it twice, that we got all new oranges twice and completely started fresh with the big pyramid. One of the fun facts about oranges, if you ever go to your supermarket, look at your oranges, it has a little sticker on it with the little barcode. Yet we would need to sit and 6,000 oranges pick that little sticker off before we could first use them. Our graphic designer, Revance Lanier, by the end of the show, because he was so good at picking it, he had like this huge ball of orange stickers with their little barcodes. And it also,
you also Arizona has lots of oranges, but we couldn't have a community drive to get oranges. They had to be the perfect sphere, the same size. They had to be like the commercially produced oranges that come looking identical.
yeah.
Otherwise it wouldn't have sat still.
And like at the grocery store, sometimes whenever you take a piece of produce out of the display, everything falls down. This is a case, or this photo on the left, my Instagram post, it was this perfect, glorious pyramid. And then before you knew it, one of them would fall and then they would all rain down, or visitors would come and take one and they would all rain down. And that was just kind of part of the piece. I think we did get a couple of photos where the pyramid was absolutely perfect, but that didn't happen that often.
And the artist didn't want it to be
No.
perfect. One of the conversations
I wanted it to be perfect.
one of the conversations I had with an institution that had shown it is they said, oh, well, we ran out of oranges and then we just had an empty square for 2 months. It was really boring. And I said, that's not what you were supposed to do. You're supposed to replace them. And they were like, no. And so I called the artist and he said, yeah, the pictures of it being an empty square are because I was poor and couldn't replace the oranges. I always wanted it to be replaced, which is what I had thought. Yeah, no, we rebuilt it to the original shape.
Yeah, Lindsay asked, did we rebuild it to the original shape or build it to where the visitors had left it? The 2 times that we completely rebuilt it, we rebuilt it to the original shape. Every Monday, we would just sort of unbuild it, throw away the squidgies, and then rebuild it into, however many levels we had left to a pretty perfect shape. And maybe it was just at 5 or 6 levels or 2 or 3 levels, but that would vary and that would change.
The artist was really committed to the pyramid shape and to the geometry of it and what that said about the relationship to other conceptual artists playing with geometry. So he really did like that people were removing things from a really recognizable shape.
And we did not have problems with insects. I don't know why. Maybe the turmeric kept them away, or the cinnamon that was in the netto that was right next to it. But we really didn't. And it also could have been that we were very vigilant about going through and getting rid of the squidgy and keeping going. But tell me, you had told me earlier today, the first time you saw this piece, because she had seen all of these pieces previously. As she mentioned before, if a work of art made her cry, this sort of went in her working checklist for this exhibition.
Well, I didn't realize it, but they obviously had been living rent free in my mind. This piece I saw when I was a undergraduate or a graduate student in London. I spent time there both times, and Tate Britain is on the Thames, and it was at winter. It was like miserable rain, freezing cold. I went inside, and the Tate Britain is like exquisite and light filled and just gorgeous. And I walked to the back galleries where the contemporary art is, and I see this pile of like beautiful oranges, and I'm so curious. I approach it. I see no labels around it. As I looked, like, are there instructions? What's going on? Why is there fruit in the galleries, especially a conservative museum like the Tate Britain? And there was a security guy standing in the corner, and I like tiptoe up to it, and I start to lean over a little bit, and I'm watching his reaction because I'm expecting him to be like,
Yeah, get away. Don't touch the art.
And he gives me this almost imperceptible nod.
Like only the Brits can do.
Yeah. And like a very flicker of a smile. And I picked up this orange. It was magical. I like walked right out of the museum. Now I had not, even buying lunch in London is expensive. So I was like, I don't know, I had some crackers in my bag and I was out for the whole day. And so I stood overlooking the Thames, like hiding in this like entryway with this bright orange and like complete contrast to everything around me. And I ate it, and it was like this magical gift. Honestly, today, it feels like the best, most tasty orange I've ever eaten in my life. Like this gift from someone that you don't know, in complete contrast to everything that's around you. It was really special. It was really special. Who knew? Eating an orange from the Tate Britain. But we had this installation in view of the front desk. And so although I didn't intend it to be the entry artwork, people would see it and make a mad dash for it. And I don't know, maybe the generosity of this piece opened them up and gave them a sense of the playfulness that I wanted to be with the exhibition.
But then our security staff had to follow around to make sure they weren't eating the orange in the museum, because we didn't want sticky orange fingers touching anything else.
Well, you can see the difference between the dreams of a curator and the realities of being a registrar.
Take that orange, put it in your pocket, eat it later. But so that was the 5 senses. That was a little bit of our behind the scenes. I do remember also, like, the first time we kind of unbuilt the pyramid, a couple of the preparators were like, well, I'm going to take these oranges home, because we took out some that weren't moldy, but were still getting a little bit squidgy. And they did that like the first time. And then everyone was like, yeah, I never want to touch or see an orange again for as long as I live.
we wasted a lot of money on oranges. I do look back at this
It
exhibition.
is a little
and-
first world with the water and the
I know.
oranges. There were a
Yeah.
lot of natural resources that kind of went away, but people also took the oranges and enjoyed them, and maybe just more people should have taken oranges. And that's the
maybe
moral to the story.
maybe I hope that people saw that exhibition and left knowing that contemporary art could be for them too.
I'm really bummed I never saw that.
Oh,
I'm really sad that Pat showed me part of it, but I didn't get to sort of experience the whole thing. I remember the rainbow, which was incredible.
yeah.
I'm going to stop recording, even though I don't know that there are any particular comments that will be difficult, but we did say we would stop recording for the comments, so I will do that.